Hey dog, it's
I am a crazy rabbit squirrel. I want my cookies!
Drown in it! Drown in it! Bro.
Oh hell no! I don't even want to do no. I don't even want to do no research on that shit.
Take that risk. I'm going live like we won't take that trip. Like I walk with the stick like a witch.
I got hurt in a car wreck.
The Sarlacc pit is one of the most iconic Star Wars monsters. Not only was it responsible for fake-killing Boba Fett, but it's just got a really cool design. And while LEGO's tried to make it several times in the past, they've all kind of sucked, because they've avoided giving us any terrain. It's been a stomachless monster, where we get 2 pieces for the mouth, and if we're lucky, a tentacle. However, it seems like they finally fixed this mistake, giving us the Desert Skiff and Sarlacc pit set. We get a massive terrain build for the Sarlacc monster, and it just looks phenomenal. It can open and close, and the tentacles are flying all over the place. And I'm so happy to finally have this awesome monster in official LEGO form. The Sarlacc pit is one of the most iconic.
This was a devastating way to ruin a
Can you move? Stop. This is why you don't climb on the freaking counters. Augustus! Stop, you're scaring me. You're scaring me.
Huh?
What did you do while I was gone today?
He's very smart. He has a lot of thoughts. He has a lot of thoughts. Look at him. He has so many.
Simon. Thank you.
It's time for you to go home. It's not safe out here. You've got to go back to Vault 101. Where the heck is he going? I mean, literally, where the heck is he going? We know where he says he's going, and I'm pretty sure he'll get there, but is he really gonna walk all the way back? Other characters in Fallout 3 do this too. They say they're gonna meet you somewhere.
We're gonna head back home now.
And then they just run off. And that's interesting because there are a lot of deadly creatures in the wasteland of Fallout 3, and at least in the case of Dogmeat, these characters can die. So is Dogmeat just invincible when he's walking home? Does he even interact with these robots and these monsters and these raiders? Also, there's a gigantic river in between us and where he's going that he's gonna have to cross. Can he swim? I've never seen him swim. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be following Dogmeat as well as a variety of other NPCs from the places they are to the places they say they're going to go, so we can figure out the real details of how they make these journeys, or if they make them at all. For this video, I spent roughly 20 hours sitting in front of my television following NPCs around in a variety of different video games. While I was doing that, there was a 0% chance I would have eaten a decent meal if it wasn't for the sponsor of this video, Factor.
Can you spare any more water?
No, I've given this guy like 30 bottles of purified water. You don't need any more water. I've given you plenty. You know what you probably need? You probably need food. Could I interest you in 20% off? What is that? Can't be repaid. Probably that's off your first bottle all the way back to Vault. Well, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a smart dog and I'm sure he'll obviously figure it out. But in the oh. Dogmeat has passed away. Yeah, it turns out that Dogmeat does not lose his taste for blood, even when you're not accompanying him directly. And as long as you're in relatively close proximity, he will just run head first into any enemies that he can smell. And he will usually get himself killed pretty quickly, which obviously is sad, but is sort of a prison of his own making because he usually does pick these fights himself. But we do need him alive in order to do this exercise, so I'm going to have to play guard duty going forward. And let me tell you, if you want to do this, you better have a good gun. The further Dogmeat walked, the weirder his directional choices got. It's almost like every turn he made made was the opposite of the turn I would have expected him to go based on where we're trying to get to. But I almost wondered if there was something about the fact that we had to cross the Potomac River that was getting in the way. Because again, at this point, I don't know that Dogmeat can swim. So maybe he's looking for a spot where he can cross the river on some sort of bridge, or maybe just a spot where the river is dried up. But no. He can swim, so I don't know what he was doing. I don't know why we walked so far, dog. Why did you walk so far? And then as soon as he got out of the river, he just kind of started wandering again. And you'll notice this pretty much any time you follow an NPC around in a Bethesda game. There is a lot of sort of wandering one direction and then immediately turning around and double backing the other direction. There's a lot of like stopping and just looking at nothing for a little while. They just make a lot of odd choices in terms of how they get from point A to point B. Now, my first thought is that behaviors like this are just glitches or mistakes or lazy development, but I almost got to wondering, if I was to follow people around in real life, would they do similar things? So I went to my local grocery store and I followed a couple of different people around very gently. You know, it wasn't weird. It was people watching. It was regular people watching. And as I observed these people, I would make a mental note anytime I noticed them doing something that if it were in a game, I would consider it kind of like a glitch. And let me tell you, we do this stuff all the time. There was a 5-minute chunk that I was looking to go buy some sugar-free Red Bull, and within that 5-minute chunk, I did it 3 times. I would walk one way and then just kind of zone out and then realize I passed the aisle and then turn back around and then go back the other way. I saw a lady just like bump into a wall with her cart. And I'm not making fun of these people. I'm saying this is like a normal human thing that you do that you probably don't notice you do. I definitely do it all the time. And I'm a genius. You know, we tend to overestimate ourselves in that way. So much like a Bethesda game, you might say that we were kind of lazily developed. Food for thought. Now, I'm not saying Bethesda intentionally programmed these things to run badly so that we would it would seem more human. I'm just saying that as humans, we have flaws, and a lot of times those flaws accidentally make their ways into the works of art that we have. And I think that's good. I think that's a positive thing. If every NPC just like did the right thing, and was efficient all the time, it'd be like living in a crazy Elon Musk Spock land. No, thanks. Now that said, there are some behaviors from NPCs that I could not justify with this roundabout logic I'm using. For example, another NPC that I really wanted to follow around was this child. This is a child that you rescue from slavery in Paradise Falls. And after you do that, the child says, I'm gonna go to Little Lamplight.
We're gonna head back home now.
And then the child runs off into the night. But what's interesting about children in Fallout is that they cannot be harmed. I think they're the only NPC that has God-given protection strictly based on their demographic, but unlike Dogmeat, he also doesn't have any way of fighting back. So when this invincible child runs into a rad scorpion, what's he gonna do? Usually what they do is they hide. Eventually they'll get bored of hiding and then they'll run. Between those two actions, usually the enemy will either go away from them or they will then run away from the enemy and everything's fine. But there was one instance where the kid ran away from a Mirelurk King, which is like a really buff fish guy, probably a foot taller than me, and I'm 7 foot. I'm 5'11". But the kid, he was trapped in a corner by one of these Mirelurk Kings, and eventually, I guess he decided that he wasn't going to be able to outrun him, and he wasn't going to be able to hide from him forever. He had to get to Little Lamplight eventually, so he just fought him. A little 4-foot-tall kid just went full-on open fists with this 8-foot-tall gargantuan monster. So they just kind of boxed for a little while, and then eventually the kid ran away, and that was that. Pretty funny. Anyway, back to the dog. I think the funniest thing about escorting dog meat around is that anytime he brutally kills somebody, no matter how much damage he took, no matter how far away he had to wander from the path he was on, the moment that enemy is dead, he just locks all the way back in and starts walking. Same speed, straight back to Vault 101, allegedly. And this is even more amusing if you consider that it sort of implies that this is what happens every time you send Dogmeat back to the vault. You just normally don't see it. See you later, Dogmeat. Hope you don't commit any first or second or third degree crimes on your way to the vault. You know, it's kind of like a Schrodinger dog situation, right? Dogmeat is neither alive nor dead. He's neither guilty, kind of like a Schrodinger's dog situation, right? Dogmeat is neither alive nor dead. He's neither guilty nor innocent of murder unless you're looking at him. Which also means that the game doesn't always function correctly unless you're not looking directly at it. The illusion of these characters getting from one place to another is broken if you actually want to look at these characters getting from one place to another. You need to look away in order for the universe to hold together, which may actually be true of real life as well. I don't think too hard about that. I just said it. I'm not a scientist. Could be true, though. Now, as I think we all assumed, after about 90 minutes, Dogmeat finally made a defensible navigational decision, and he turned back east and walked all the way back to Vault 101. It took about another 2 hours, but it was pretty straightforward from there on out. And just like if you fast travel to the vault, he walks up the little path and then perches up there waiting for you to return. So that's great. And if you extrapolate this to the whole game, it's actually pretty impressive. I know that it's very old at this point, and I'm sure a lot of you don't think it's as interesting as I do, but I love this idea that if an NPC in a Bethesda game says, I'm gonna go here, and you decide you want to say, prove it, they actually will. It's a little funky because they might get murdered, but the threads of the world are there. It's almost like a big, giant, slightly crappy version of Majora's Mask. You know, perhaps the best Zelda game ever made back on the N64, where they had a 3-day cycle, and every single NPC in this village had a point in space to go to at every single moment, so you could follow people throughout their entire routine across these 3 days. That was obviously a much more elegant way to do it, but it was also way smaller in scale. So it's not unique to Bethesda games, right? Even other modern games, like Tears of the Kingdom has this same thing going on. You can find NPCs wandering along the paths, and they will go all the way from one place to another place. There are obviously a few wrinkles, right? Nintendo makes their games with a little bit more polish than Bethesda maybe does. Like, for example, characters in Tears of the Kingdom, when it starts raining, as I'm sure we've all seen, they will run and sort of try to find shelter, and they'll look for whatever the closest thing is along their path that will offer kind of an overhang to hide under. So in this case, this lady just found like a rock that was sloped just enough that it would protect her from the rain. And she waited for the rain to get done and went back on her way. It's also cool because in Tears of the Kingdom, when you talk to these NPCs, they're not people who are normally going to give you quests. There's not that kind of interaction. They really are background characters, but you could talk to them and they might say something like, oh, you should go here and look at these things. It's so cool. And then they'll walk, and it turns out they are walking to the place that they recommended you go see. For example, this lady walked all the way to Kakariko Village, walked all the way up some steps and went to an observation platform so she could view these old giant ruins, which she had told me about all the way back at the place she started. You know, it's very similar to what Bethesda did 2 decades ago in Fallout 3, but with just that characteristic Nintendo restraint and polish. So that almost brings us to the end of exploring how these NPCs behave in Fallout 3. But there is one other class of NPCs that was actually the spark that got me interested in doing this video, doing this experiment, and that is these guys. This is somebody who has been captured by super mutants, and you as the player character can go to them and let them go. You can free them because you are an angel. And anytime you free them, they'll always say something like, oh, thank you so much.
I can't believe it, I'm alive!
You know, here's a reward. I've got to get out of here. But they never say where they're going. And I've always been really curious about, like, what does this NPC's life look like after my role in their life is done? Do they go somewhere specific? Do they have a home? Or maybe in this case, because they don't have a destination, they do just disappear like maybe we would have expected the other people to do. The problem is they run really fucking fast. They run faster than the player character, so it's really hard to keep up with them. And because you don't know where their destination is, you can't even like make good decisions about how to cut them off. So in the past, it's always been too annoying to follow them, but of course, I couldn't not do it for this video. So here's what happens. Ready? Set? Go. All right, here we go. Where are we going? Okay, down over here, okay. Train station, got it. Going inside here. Oh, wait. Where'd he go? Hello? Hello? Oh my god, he turned into a ghoul. Okay, so this guy just made a beeline for the nearest enterable door. Then he went into it, and then he disappeared forever. Obviously, there's a fun little narrative you can build that he did turn into a ghoul, but I'm pretty sure that, like, as far as the game mechanics are concerned, that man is gone. Which kind of goes to what I was saying, that maybe because they don't have a destination, they do just disappear. But let's do it one more time with a different one of these captive people and just see if that still happens. Hello, ma'am. Would you like to be freed today? Okay, off you go. Oh, geez. Man, she's really running. Now that's a lady that knows how to escape captivity. She ran for a little ways and then immediately started swimming in the Potomac River, but then she stayed in the Potomac River, and she stayed in the Potomac River, and then she tried to drown herself in the Potomac River, and it was really hard to see her, so I kept almost losing track of her. It felt like playing one of those ball cupping games. Not ball cup, you know what I'm saying, the games with the balls and the cups. Doesn't matter. And then again, after about 10 minutes, she got out and started sprinting out into the wasteland again. Now, when you follow these NPCs around, you really do have to be careful about watching where they're going, because if you take your eyes off of them, they will just dart behind a rock, and then you won't know which way they went, and then you're done. So you have to follow them, and as you follow them, they're gradually going to get farther and farther away from you because they're faster than you. So you have to make guesses about what way you think they're going to go, and then try to like do a little Pythagorean theorem and cut them off in the way that they turn. Thankfully, every once in a while, they do like just stop to catch their breath, which often gives you a chance to keep up with them. So it's not horrible, but it is annoying. And what's interesting about this lady is we passed a lot of potential doors that she could have gone in if that's what she was going to do. Subway station doors, houses, buildings. We even got pretty close to the city of Megaton at one point, and I almost got excited because I thought, oh, maybe this is like a little in-universe explanation for all of those settlers that end up in Megaton. They're people who were released and then they run there and now they live there. But she didn't want to live in Megaton. She took one look at that hunk of junk and said, no thanks, I'd rather take my chances out in the wasteland. And let me tell you, we ran all through the night. She would get scared and she would hide. When we got attacked, I would defend us and I would save her life. The more we ran, the more attached to her I got. And then at one point she stopped to catch her breath and she said this.
This is hopeless.
Which kind of weirdly felt kind of sad to me because, you know, she's an NPC in a video game. She didn't choose this situation, which kind of weirdly felt kind of sad to me.
This is hopeless.
The sun was just starting to creep up over the horizon, and we had been running all night long when we got attacked again. Of course, she didn't have any way to defend herself, so it was up to me to play bodyguard. And I'm sad to report that I failed. She got totally turned into green goo by a laser gun. Every little quirk of her personality, all of that pessimism she had, was just totally apathetically liquefied by a computer program with a gun. Oh, well.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Boylai Hobby Time. I just bought this slot car track and I had an idea. What if I took it from a normal and somewhat boring track to a fully themed Mario Kart track?
Mario Kart.
So that's what I did today. The first thing to figure out was the elevation of the track sections, as I needed it to cross over itself high enough for Mario and Luigi to fit underneath. Each of these foam layers is 1 inch tall, so I decided to work with foam layers as my main metric, and to make things easy, I used some stand-in blocks just to make sure everything was sitting right. For the sloped sections, I glued together the foam layers and I cut a straight line from corner to corner using my hot wire table. Once the path of the track and all of the inclines and declines were sorted, I replaced the temporary block towers under the high sections with a large curved foam monolith. I traced out the shape of the tunnel where the track passes underneath, and I cut that out as well. With everything sitting how it was supposed to be, it was time to set the track aside for a minute and get the foam glued in place permanently, obviously using some foam-safe superglue. I brought back one section of track to make sure that it was still fitting correctly, and made some final refinements to the shape before moving on to making some mushrooms. To make the tops of these mushrooms, I used some offcuts that were already stacked together, and I cut them into cylinders on my hot wire table. I then rounded off the top till I had a rough dome shape, and then I refined the shape of the dome using an orbital sander. Once the sander had done its job, I hot glued the top of the mushroom onto a cardboard roll for the stem. I repeated that process 2 more times for a total of 3 mushrooms. And while I had that cardboard roll out, I went ahead and I cut up a few extra pieces to make some pipes, because this would not be Mario if there were no pipes. And one more thing that's necessary for a raceway in Mushroom Kingdom is blocks. I'll be painting these and everything else a little later in the video. But first, we need to cover all this foam. I started by putting a large handful of paper mache mix into a small cup, along with some plaster. And step 2 was to move everything to a larger cup because larger cups hold more. After mixing everything together thoroughly, I threw in the water, I mixed it some more, and I smeared it on the foam. The goal with this round of paste was to primarily cover all of the vertical surfaces that will end up looking somewhere between rock and dirt. I'm glad I upgraded to the large cup because I had to make 5 rounds in total, and that would have been a lot for the small cup to handle. One thing the small cup could handle, however, was this batch of Mod Podge and plaster that I mixed up to cover the foam on the mushrooms as well as smooth out the paper look on those pipes. Finally, after the first round of paste was mostly dry, it was time to protect all the remaining pink surfaces using the classic plaster paint and Mod Podge mix, which I opted to apply with a more personal and hands-on method. After letting that dry for a few minutes, I came back with some isopropyl alcohol and gave it a nice final smoothing for that optimal slot car performance. I then set that aside to dry fully, and it was time to paint some toadstools and some pipes. And while I do that, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons. I took everything outside and I kinda primed them with a tan spray paint, but they looked too much like edible mushrooms at this point, so I quickly changed all the tops to red so nobody would take a bite out of them. I cleaned the red from my airbrush and switched to green, and after a few coats, the pipes were done, and then I switched back to the mushrooms to add the white spots. The overspray was a little more excessive than I had expected, so I went back with a brush and I cleaned up the lines between the red and the white. I then used a larger brush to fill in all the areas between those lines, and I'm pretty happy with the results. With that, the mushrooms and the pipes were done, so it was time to paint some bricks. After all the bricks were on the table, I sorted them into even piles and then got them on some painting bases. Lining many of the walls in Mario Kart, especially the older games, were found these bricks that were almost like Legos. They were found in many different color combinations, but I decided to go with the classic red, yellow, green, and blue from Super Mario Kart. 3 of the colors had enough pigment for full coverage without the need for a primer, but the yellow definitely required one. Once my little tape trays full of colorful bricks were done, I switched back to the base, which was now dry, and I began painting that as well. I gave the cliff faces a yellow-brown dirt color, which I saw in some reference photos, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be rocks or dirt, but the color helps keep things ambiguous. After that, I gave all the grassy green areas a base coat of grassy green. After the base coats, I brought back the track sections, I assembled it, and it was time to finalize this raceway. I installed the guardrails that came with the track to help reduce the likelihood that the cars would fly off the track if they were going too fast. Let's just say if you're going too fast and your car flies off the track, the guardrails don't do much. The next step was to load up the static grass applicator and cover all the green areas with a layer of static tack from Woodland Scenics. Between each round of grass sprinkling, I collected the excess with a sock and a vacuum so that I could use it again and it wouldn't go to waste. I repeated the steps until the whole thing was covered in a nice green lawn. And after the static tack had all dried, I glued the Mario-themed scatter terrain in place. Next, I used some black 4.0 to paint the inside of the pipes, so that if anybody looked down into them, it would look like it went somewhere and it wasn't just grass. The last little detail I wanted to add was a checkered flag above the finish line. I used a piece of styrene and some masking tape to achieve the checkered pattern. I'm not showing the rest of my normal workstation because it became the staging ground for this build and it is an absolute disaster right now. After peeling off every other square of tape, painted over the whole thing with black, and then I satisfyingly peeled away the rest of the tape to reveal my nice clean pattern. Before I throw this banner in place, I'd like to show you a collection of builds made by my patrons. The theme of the month for June for our art challenge was video games, and I think they did a great job. Thank you very much to everyone who participated. Thank you very much to everyone who participated. After gluing the banner in place, I threw Luigi and his brother in starting positions. I connected my controllers, and after that, I called it good.
LEGO Star Wars fans have been wanting a collectible minifigure series for a matter of when for LEGO Star Wars' turn. But year after year of LEGO's most popular theme not getting a CMF series, excuses started to be made, suggesting that LEGO just aren't able to produce Anakin's variant of C-3PO in a separate poly bag, and also the Chrome Stormtrooper back in the day. And the counter you'll hear to this is that why do then LEGO sell a form of collectible minifigure series for Star Wars in foil packs attached to magazines, LEGO magazines in Europe? Surely they're just selling the collectible minifigures alongside the magazine for technical reasons, right? They're selling a LEGO magazine which comes with a free gift LEGO collectible minifigure. You're not directly buying that foil pack. Now, that
The LEGO poly bags that we have here in this giant barn, legitimate. Some of the sets you see in our videos, it has the set number as well as the name. And some of them just have the set number. But rest assured, it says LEGO on the front, it says LEGO on the back, even the parts say LEGO. It just depends on where we get them, whether it has the set number and name or not. The LEGO poly bags that we have here in this
At this point, you already know I'm a big fan of zombie games. You are forced to survive in the apocalyptic world of Festerville. The gameplay was simple, yet oddly satisfying. Instead of traditional movement, you scroll by swiping the screen to look around an area. Then you can tap on stuff to interact with them. You can tap doors to enter buildings, tap objects to find loot, and tap to talk to NPCs to learn more about the world. The game also has a very unique art style that I absolutely love, along with a really interesting story, complete with rich characters, subtle details, and a lot of lore potential. Now, while this sounds all well and good, the game would end up mixed. mostly due to the fact that it was bogged down by the infamous freemium business model. But despite its flaws and negative reviews by critics, the game was still loved by gamers in general, and the game would slowly improve over time with regular updates and chapters. That was until it was suddenly removed from the App Store. No warning, no message from the developers, no nothing. It just vanished. It was so sudden that people who tried to re-download it again were surprised to see it was just gone. Even as recent as last year, people were still trying to find out what happened to their
There. Those ain't zombies. What would you call them? Quick! Move! Get over here!
This is my store!
A customer!
Imagine something about research.
Those a customer! The first thing you'll notice is the improved graphics. That sounds like a that much more enjoyable. That sounds like a complete overhaul. It makes me wonder if the game's main concept is still intact. If you've played the original, rest assured that its core remains unchanged in this deluxe remaster. We did our best to respect the direction of the original game. We kept the fundamental gameplay the same while improving upon the user experience. With this, we believe that both veterans and newcomers alike will be able to enjoy a fresh experience. Our goal was to ensure that today's players would experience the same shock players felt when the original game was released. We believe we accomplished this goal with Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. We hope that everyone will give it a try. Unable to get any definitive answers out of director Murai, we gave art director Satoshi Takamatsu the third degree. It turns out he had ambitions of his own for this project. Because the original came out 18 years ago, there were many limitations during development. Thanks to nearly 2 decades of technological advancements, we were able to accomplish a lot that couldn't be done back then. For example, Resident Evil, Capcom's other zombie franchise, focused on quality over quantity. Dead Rising took a different approach. The goal was to pack as many zombies as possible into that huge shopping mall. This meant each individual zombie wasn't as polished as we would have liked. However, this time around, we were able to focus on quality as well. As the art director, I couldn't be more pleased that we were able to apply high-end modeling and production to both the main character Frank and all of the NPCs. Of course, another critical aspect of Dead Rising that we have to address is the shopping mall setting. In the original game, the Willamette Parkview Mall is made up of several areas, like Entrance Plaza and Paradise Plaza, each with its own unique characteristics. We've taken these designs and evolved them even further by adding real-time lighting and shadow effects, so that each location takes on a different appearance, depending on the time of day. That's how much detail we've put into this project. For character animations, we tried to limit unnecessary changes and use the original data as much as possible, especially during action scenes. We could have made them more realistic with today's tools, but we wanted to preserve the unique and comical movements that made the original Dead Rising so special. Takamatsu was finally giving us the info we were looking for. However, we couldn't stop there. We had to know why this is called a deluxe remaster. To do that, we tracked down the game's producer and managed to get his account. I think Dead Rising is a unique game with extremely tight game design, even by today's standards. However, we also knew the original game was released 18 years ago, and that improvements were needed to reach a modern audience. That's why we focused on improving playability, in addition to overhauling
I'm creating an entire Jurassic Park in LEGO, with it covering more than 20 base plates, making this my biggest creation yet, with the full park reveal at the end of the video. The first thing I did was gather up all the dinosaurs I have in my collection, ranging from huge carnivores to cute little herbivores. We'll need to build exhibits for all of them. I've also been saving a few sets that'll help build up the park. Luckily, I was able to find them on clearance since LEGO's prices are out of control. So let's jump. Ranging from huge carnivores to cute little herbivores. We'll need to build exhibits for all of them.
This is why you don't climb on the freaking counters.